The wind had stopped. For a night that should have carried the soft hum of distant traffic and festive cheer, there was only silence, so complete it pressed against the ears, making every small sound unbearably loud. Emma shivered, her hands wrapped around the steering wheel as she navigated the frost-bitten road. The Christmas lights of the town she had hoped to reach were nowhere in sight. A sharp crack echoed from the tree lane. She froze. Not a branch snapping under her tires, not the wind, something else. Something deliberate. Her headlights cut through the dark, illuminating nothing but the skeletal outlines of trees, their bare limbs reaching like accusing fingers. Then a shadow moved across the road. Quick, fleeting, impossible to track. Her heart hammered, and she slammed the brakes. Her car skidded slightly, crunching over unseen gravel. A whisper, soft, almost polite, yet impossible to locate, slithered into the cabin. "You shouldn't be here." Emma's breath fogged the windshield. No one should be out here at this hour. And yet, she had seen it. Something standing there. Something waiting. The silence returned, thicker than before, heavier, as if the darkness itself were pressing in, holding its breath. Then a light, dim, flickering, appeared in the distance, like a single candle burning inside an abandoned house. It beckoned, hypnotic and wrong. She didn't know why, but she had to go. And as she turned the wheel, her headlights caught a face at the edge of the woods. Pale, still eyes reflecting the faint glimmer of the distant candle. Emma's stomach twisted. It wasn't human. Before she could scream, it vanished. And the silence waited. Emma's hands trembled as she gripped the wheel, trying to steady her racing heartbeat. The road stretched ahead like a black ribbon, fractured only by the occasional glimmer of frost under her headlights. She knew she should turn back, but the thought of retracing these winding, unfamiliar paths made her stomach twist even more. Her phone battery had died hours ago, leaving her blind to directions and, more disturbingly, alone. The faint light from the distance flickered again, like a candle in a forgotten window. Emma's rational mind screamed to ignore it. Empty houses were common out here, abandoned farms dotting the countryside, but a morbid curiosity drew her closer. She slowed, the tires crunching over gravel, the engine echoing in the hollow stillness. Then she saw the building. A small old motel, its paint peeling and windows clouded with grime, stood like a monument to neglect. A single, flickering neon sign read Holiday Inn, its irony cruel against the snow-dusted landscape. The light she had seen came from a lamp in the lobby, swaying slightly as if disturbed by someone, or something, inside. Emma parked, the car's engine shivering to silence. She hesitated, sensing the weight of the night pressing against her chest. The air smelled faintly of smoke of wood burning long ago, but also something metallic and wrong. The wind remained curiously absent. Even the trees seemed still, as though listening. Her boots crunched on the icy path to the entrance. The door was unlocked. She pushed it, and a bell tinkled softly, unnaturally loud in the empty lobby. Dust motes floated in the weak glow of a single chandelier. The reception desk was empty, but the register drawer was slightly ajar. Papers were scattered across the counter, like someone had left in a hurry. A voice, a whisper, fragile but insistent, scratched through the silence. "You shouldn't be here." Emma spun, heart hammering, but saw no one. Just the flickering lamp and the shadows that pooled in corners. She laughed nervously, the sound brittle. "It's just me. I'm staying here." A sudden slam echoed from the back hallway. Emma froze. Her eyes adjusted to the gloom, catching a glimpse of a narrow corridor leading to the rooms. One of the doors at the far end was slightly open, light spilling like a weak heartbeat. And then she heard it, a soft shuffle like footsteps, but slower, deliberate. Her rational mind told her to leave, but the sense of inevitability clawed at her, making every instinct scream to follow. She moved forward, hand brushing against the cracked wallpaper, feeling the chill seep through her coat. Each step felt heavier, the silence around her stretching, waiting. From the darkness, a faint laugh echoed, long, hollow, wrong. Emma froze again. It didn't sound human. She couldn't place the tone. Sometimes it was high, almost like a child, then low, guttural, impossible. Her eyes caught a photograph on the wall, a faded family portrait. The faces were smiling, frozen in time, yet their eyes seemed hollow, like they were watching her, pleading or warning. She reached to touch it. The glass was icy, almost burning, and a chill ran down her spine. "You can't leave," the voice whispered again, this time from directly behind her. Emma whirled around. No one. Just the shadowed hallway. She stumbled back, hitting the wall, and her breath came in ragged gasps. The lamp flickered violently, and in that brief strobe of light, she saw them. Faint outlines of figures at the end of the hallway. Standing. Watching. Waiting. Her mind raced, trying to rationalize. Maybe the wind moved something, maybe the shadows. No. The silence of the motel pressed in, heavy and complete, as if the building itself were alive and breathing with a slow, sinister rhythm. A sudden creak overhead made her look up. The chandelier swung slightly, though she hadn't touched it. And then footsteps. Soft, deliberate pacing above her. She wasn't alone on the upper floor. She could feel it in her bones, a presence, patient and inevitable, waiting for her to notice. Her hands shook as she fumbled for her phone, hoping, praying that some signal existed. Nothing. Black screen. Dead. Then she noticed the calendar pinned to the reception desk. The date. December 24th. Christmas Eve. The weight of the night hit her fully. She wasn't just somewhere remote. She was somewhere forgotten. Somewhere that had been waiting. And now, somehow, she was a part of it. The whispers grew louder. Impossibly close. They didn't belong to any person. They belonged to the building, to the air itself. Emma backed toward the exit, every step echoing like a drum in the hollow lobby. She reached the door and froze. Her reflection in the glass wasn't hers alone. Another face, pale and expressionless, stared back. Its eyes black, hollow, impossible. A cold smile spread across its lips. Emma tried to scream. And then the door slammed shut behind her, trapping her in the silence. The lobby felt alive now, though nothing moved. The shadows clung to corners like viscous liquid, and the cold seemed to seep not from the walls but from somewhere beneath the floorboards. Emma's breaths came in shallow bursts, each fogging the air in front of her face. Her hands were clammy, her fingers trembling, but she forced herself forward. The hallway stretched endlessly, the doors on either side warped and twisted in the dim light, some slightly ajar, others hanging crooked on their hinges. She reached the first door on the left. Room 1. Its number plate was chipped, the paint flaking. The door creaked when she pushed it open, revealing a small, dust-laden room, a faded Christmas wreath hanging crookedly above the bed. The bedspread was threadbare, patterned with snowflakes that had yellowed with age. The furniture was old, scratched, and smelled faintly of mildew. Nothing seemed alive here. Nothing yet. A sudden noise, a whisper barely audible, made her freeze. It wasn't in the room. It was behind her, somewhere in the walls, or perhaps just beyond perception. "You shouldn't be here." The voice was insistent, patient, teasing. Emma spun, heart hammering, but saw only shadows. She forced herself to leave the room, passing into the next hallway. The building had grown larger, impossibly so. She remembered the lobby, small, intimate, but now the corridor stretched farther than it should have. Rooms numbered into the dozens, doors doubling back on themselves. Some were ajar, revealing glimpses of lives left behind. A child's shoe, a plate with half-eaten food, a photograph lying face down. All of it dusty, aged, yet somehow recent. A soft shuffle from the floor above made her look up. The footsteps were deliberate, pacing. She could almost imagine them circling, watching, waiting. A faint chill swept through her, brushing her neck like cold fingers. Emma's mind screamed at her to leave, but the force that had pulled her here now held her in place, tethered to something she couldn't see, couldn't understand. She remembered the stories she'd heard in small towns growing up, old legends whispered in pubs and around fireplaces, tales of buildings that fed on fear, of rooms that existed outside normal space, of spirits that waited for the curious. She had dismissed them as childish. Now she understood. Dismissing them had been the first mistake. Emma turned a corner and found a small stairwell, its railing covered in splintered wood. She ascended cautiously. Each step groaned under her weight, the sound echoing far beyond what should have been possible. At the top, a long corridor stretched endlessly, doors on either side like teeth in a predator's grin. She noticed something. Patterns in the dust on the floor. Footprints. They weren't hers alone. They circled the hallway, looping back impossibly, sometimes crossing over themselves. And the footprints weren't consistent. They appeared, disappeared, shifted in size. Emma swallowed hard. Her rational mind tried to explain it. Drafts, old marks, fading impressions. But a deeper part of her knew. The prints weren't made by anything human. A door at the far end of the hallway stood slightly open, faint light spilling out. Emma's curiosity warred with her terror. She approached slowly. The door led to a room filled with old records and photographs. Yellowed newspaper clippings littered the floor, the headlines screaming of tragedies long past. Disappearances, fires, drownings. One photo caught her eye. The motel decades ago, identical in appearance, yet eerily empty. The date scribbled on the back. December 24th, 1962. A whisper. Direct, sharp. "You're next." Emma stumbled back. Her mind reeled. These weren't stories anymore. This building, it remembered. It waited. Every event, every soul that had passed through left its mark. She could feel them all, whispering, circling, lingering in the corners of her vision. Then came the faint smell of smoke, acrid and metallic, curling from the far end of the corridor. Emma's gaze followed it, and she saw a faint shadow moving across the walls. Not a person. Something fluid, writhing, bending light and shape. She could feel it in the room, pressing against her sanity. Her mind began to fracture. One moment she thought she heard children laughing, the next a woman screaming, pleading. Voices layered over each other, some clear, some indecipherable. She covered her ears, but it didn't stop. The air itself seemed alive with whispers. Emma forced herself to move. She tried doors at random. Some were locked, bolted from the inside. Others opened onto rooms that shifted as she looked away. A mirror reflected the corridor behind her, yet sometimes her reflection lagged, or moved independently. Once she saw herself standing at the top of the stairs, staring, while her body remained where she actually was. In one room she found a journal, brittle with age. Its pages were filled with frantic handwriting. The building watches. It remembers. The walls breathe, the floors pulse. The ones who enter are never alone. We thought it was only rooms, only doors. We were wrong. December 24. The night it claims. Emma dropped the journal. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed far too long, vibrating through the hallways. She spun toward the door, then froze. A figure stood there, barely visible in the dim light. Its face obscured, but she could see its eyes. Black, hollow, unyielding. Who's there?" she stammered. No answer. Just the silence that had been with her since she entered. But then, softly behind her, the whisper returned. "It knows you." Panic surged. She ran. The corridor twisted, impossible in its geometry. Doors that had been closed were now open. Rooms she hadn't noticed now staring at her with empty, expectant windows. She stumbled into a room that smelled of decay and old pine, a Christmas tree still standing, ornaments dusty and cracked. On the wall, scrawled in what looked like soot, were words she couldn't read at first. Then clarity hit. No one leaves on Christmas Eve. Her hands shook, her breath ragged. She backed into the corner. Shadows shifted around her, forming shapes she didn't dare name. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, voices of the lost, of the dead, of the building itself. She realized with growing horror that the motel wasn't just haunted, it was alive. And it had been waiting for her, decades in the making. The first flashback hit her then, a memory of her childhood, stories told by her grandmother. A cursed inn, travelers vanishing, strange lights in the woods on winter nights. Emma had always thought those were fairy tales. Now she knew better. The tales had been warnings. She moved to the door, determined to leave. But as she touched the handle, the hallway shifted again. The exit was gone. In its place was another corridor, darker, longer, stretching infinitely. And along its length, figures stood, silent, watching. Emma realized she was trapped in a living nightmare, in a building that bent reality itself. And the whispers grew insistent, almost eager. "You are ours now. You belong to the night." Her mind began to falter. Questions she had tried to ignore clawed at her sanity. Was this really happening? Was she awake? Or had she stepped into a space outside of time, a trap that existed only to torment those foolish enough to enter? Another flashback, a neighbor from her grandmother's village, an old caretaker, warning her mother years ago, never on Christmas Eve, never alone. They wait. The pieces fit together. The motel, the night, the silence. It had been waiting for her, and now there was no escape. Emma's panic spiraled into terror. The shadows stretched, forming grotesque shapes. Faces in the walls, limbs twisting impossibly. Every door opened onto darkness. Every reflection was wrong. Every whisper promised something worse. And in the deepest corner of the corridor, she saw movement that made her stomach turn. Something, or someone, emerging, slow, deliberate. Not human, not alive in any way she could comprehend. It was waiting, patient, inevitable. She realized then, fully, that there would be no turning back. The motel was not just a place. It was a predator. And tonight, on Christmas Eve, it had claimed her attention. Emma screamed. But the building swallowed it, turning her terror into silence once more. Emma's breath came in ragged bursts as she ran down the endless corridor, the walls pulsating, stretching and contracting as if the motel itself were breathing. Her hands clawed at the cold plaster, leaving smears of frost and dust, but it offered no purchase. The floor beneath her feet seemed to shift, tilting slightly with each step, throwing her off balance. The whispers had multiplied, layered over one another until they formed a deafening chorus. "You cannot leave. You belong. The night is ours." Each word pierced her mind like shards of glass. Emma covered her ears, but it made no difference. The voices were not just in her ears. They were inside her. She reached a junction where 3 corridors met. Each was darker than the last, twisting in ways that defied reason. Shadows moved along the walls, coalescing into shapes that resembled faces, hands, limbs, all reaching for her. She stumbled into the center, overwhelmed, and collapsed to her knees. A sudden, sharp voice cut through the chaos. "Emma." It was familiar yet alien. Her own name, drawn out in a hiss that made her skin crawl. She looked up. At the end of the central corridor, a figure stood. Pale, almost translucent, eyes hollow and black, lips twisted into a smile that had no warmth. Its presence warped the space around it. The walls seemed to bend, the ceiling sinking toward her. Emma tried to scream, but no sound came. The air was thick, heavy, pressing against her throat. She scrambled backward, knocking over a dusty chair, the echo rolling endlessly through the halls. The figure began to move toward her, slow, deliberate, impossible. Shadows detached from the walls to circle around it, forming writhing, half-seen shapes that blocked every possible escape. The whispers escalated, now forming words she could barely comprehend. "Your fear feeds us. Stay. Forever." Emma's mind fractured further. Memories she had thought forgotten, Christmases long past, family arguments, small betrayals, merged with the motel's history. Faces from the photographs, the faded newspapers, the voices of the missing, all converged into a singular, horrifying clarity. The motel had claimed them all. No one leaves on Christmas Eve. Her panic turned to desperation. She ran, doors and hallways twisting around her like a living maze. One room revealed a Christmas tree, ornaments cracked and flickering like dying embers. Beneath it lay small toys. Her toys, from her childhood, though impossible. How could they be here? How could this place know her? A sudden flash of movement. The pale figure had split, multiplied. Shadows formed human shapes, each one whispering her name. The air was cold, wet with condensation, the smell of decay overwhelming. Emma stumbled into a hallway lined with mirrors. Each reflection was wrong. Her face stretched, her eyes black, her mouth open in silent scream. She spun, trying to escape, only to see that behind her, in every reflection, the figure loomed closer. One mirror shattered without contact, shards floating midair before raining down around her. Each fragment reflected not her, but the motel itself, the endless hallways, the shadows, the faces of the lost. The whispers became screams, overlapping, impossibly loud. Join us, belong, cannot leave. Emma's vision blurred. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to anchor herself to reality. It's a dream. It has to be. But the cold metal of a door handle pressed into her palm reminded her it was real. The weight of inevitability pressed on her chest. She realized with bone-deep horror that the motel didn't just trap bodies. It trapped minds, bending perception, distorting memory, devouring hope. A sudden movement at the far end of the corridor drew her attention. The pale figure now stood directly at the exit, the one she had desperately sought. Its smile widened, impossibly, its hollow eyes gleaming. The walls around it rippled, forming a distorted, water-like reflection of the hallway behind her. Emma ran, her boots slapping against the warped floor. "Stop running," the voice hissed, now clearly emanating from everywhere at once. "You belong." She reached a door, solid, real. It should have led outside to freedom. She pushed, and for a fleeting second, daylight shimmered through the crack. Relief surged, only to be replaced by terror. The figure was there, between her and the light, its form stretching impossibly tall, limbs bending in impossible angles. Its mouth opened, revealing darkness where a throat should be, and a sound emerged that wasn't human, a scream that echoed inside her skull. Emma's legs buckled. She fell to the floor. The shadows surged around her, coiling, constricting. The light from the door flickered, as if the sun itself were refusing to shine. She tried to crawl, to reach for escape, but the floor had become sticky, resisting her movements. Her mind screamed, "Fight! Fight! Fight!" The pale figure stepped closer, each movement warping the air, bending the shadows around it. Its whispers merged with the chorus of the lost. "We are eternal. You are ours. Forever." Emma's vision swam. She saw brief flashes. Families who had vanished, travelers lost, Christmas mornings frozen in fear. The motel had collected them all. Their eyes turned to her, pleading and accusing at once. She realized that leaving was never an option. Then came the sudden silence. Not peace, but the oppressive kind of stillness that crushes sanity. Every whisper, every sound stopped. The figure froze, the shadows paused midair. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. Emma's instincts screamed. She lunged at the door, forcing herself upward, and for a single heart-stopping moment, the door gave way. Sunlight, or something like it, washed over her face. She stepped through. The world snapped, twisted violently. The motel's walls dissolved into mist, yet the figure remained, standing at the edge of reality, smiling. It reached out, impossibly long fingers stretching toward her. She felt a tug, not physical, but in her mind, deep, primal, unavoidable. Emma screamed. The scream echoed infinitely, then was swallowed by the cold, heavy silence of the night. She fell forward. When she opened her eyes, she was outside. Snow falling softly, covering footprints, erasing the motel's existence. A small cabin flickered in the distance, lights warm, inviting. Relief surged. She ran toward it. Then, a movement in the snow caught her eye. Footprints leading back. And they weren't hers alone. They ended at the spot where the motel should have been, but there was nothing. Only the snow untouched except for the faint impression of a figure, standing tall, eyes hollow, smiling. Emma's legs trembled. The wind whispered, soft, insistent. "We are eternal. You are ours." She ran without looking back, the cold biting at her skin. But in the corners of her vision, shadows followed. She could feel them, patient and eternal, just beyond reach. Every step forward felt like running in place. And as the first faint lights of Christmas morning appeared, she realized something undeniable. Escaping the motel didn't mean escaping what it had claimed. The memory of its whispers, the weight of its inevitability, would follow her forever. Emma's scream was swallowed by the wind, and then silence returned, heavier than before. Emma stumbled through the snow, each step heavy with exhaustion, each breath a sharp stab of cold. The faint glow of the distant cabin had promised warmth, safety, but she didn't trust it. Not anymore. Her mind was frayed, every nerve raw from the motel's relentless torment. The snow muffled her steps, yet in the quiet she could hear them. The whispers, faint but present, curling around her thoughts like smoke. You belong. We are eternal. The cabin door opened before she could knock. A woman's face, kind and concerned, appeared, framed in warm lamplight. Are you okay?" she asked. Her voice was soft, grounding. Emma's lips parted, but no sound came. Her throat felt raw, tight, as if the night had claimed her voice. She nodded mutely, and the woman stepped aside, ushering her inside. The interior was warm, smelling of pine, firewood, and something comforting she hadn't realized she missed: human life. Emma sank onto a chair, wrapping her arms around herself. Her hands shook violently. The woman handed her a blanket, and she pulled it close, feeling the fragile comfort of reality, or what passed for it. For a moment, she thought she was safe. She had escaped. The motel was gone. The snow erased all traces of its presence. She could tell herself it had been a nightmare, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and isolation. But deep inside, a part of her knew better. Her thoughts spiraled. The faces in the photographs, the whispers, the endless corridors, they were not gone. They had followed her, lingering in the edges of her mind, patient and persistent. Each quiet moment, each silence, reminded her of the motel's presence. It had not been a place. It had been a sentence, a claim on her very soul. The woman asked again softly, "Do you want some tea?" Emma nodded, but her eyes were distant, scanning the cabin as if it too might twist and reveal horrors. Her fingers traced the rim of the cup, cold and fragile. She sipped, tasting warmth, comfort, a fleeting reminder of life outside the nightmare. But it did little to steady her. Outside, snowflakes drifted silently, each one delicate, each one indifferent. Emma realized that the world had moved on, celebrating Christmas, unaware of what had waited, patient, in the dark. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky in pale colors that should have been beautiful, but she could not see them. Her mind was still inside the motel, running endless corridors, doors opening to darkness, shadows following, waiting. She tried to speak, to explain, but the words tangled, meaningless, swallowed by a weight she could not lift. Her voice had returned, but it carried none of the power she needed. Even recounting the events would not reach anyone. Who would believe the silent corridors, the endless hallways, the whispers of the lost? The world outside would insist it was just a story, a hallucination, a bad memory. But Emma knew, the motel was real, and so were the shadows it left behind. She rose, moving toward the window, looking out at the snowy world. The sun glinted off the frost, making everything sparkle like a postcard. She wanted to believe in normalcy, in light, but her reflection in the glass stared back at her with hollow eyes. For a moment, she saw the faint outlines of the pale figure behind her, smiling. She spun around, nothing. Yet the certainty remained. It was watching, patient and eternal. The cabin felt too fragile, too temporary. She understood with bone-deep clarity that she had not left the motel. She had merely stepped into a different layer of it, a shadow version of safety. The motel's reach was infinite, its patience relentless. And Christmas Eve, it always returned, always came for those who wandered too far, who strayed from the warmth of hearths, who answered the wrong call in the night. Night fell again. Emma lit a small candle, the flame trembling, casting shadows that stretched and danced along the walls. The whispers were gone for now, but she felt them in the silence, in the spaces between the light. Every shadow could hide them. Every quiet moment could conceal their return. She sank to the floor, knees drawn to her chest, and listened. The house was quiet, the wind soft, the snow covering all evidence of the night's terror. And yet she could feel it, the inevitable pull, the patient claim of the motel, waiting for her to falter, waiting for her to stray. The candle flickered, casting one last shadow across the wall. In its wavering light, Emma saw a shape, faint but unmistakable, emerging from the corner of the room. Pale, hollow eyes, impossibly still. She gasped, but no sound came. The candle guttered, smoke curling upward. When the light returned, The figure was gone. Emma realized the truth, unbearable yet undeniable. She was no longer safe, not in the cabin, not anywhere. The motel had left a part of itself inside her, an echo of its corridors, its whispers, its claim. Christmas Eve would come again. The silence would return. And when it did, she would hear the call. She would hear the voices. She would see the corridors stretching into infinity. She hugged her knees tighter. The snow fell silently outside, indifferent, covering all traces, erasing footprints. The world celebrated Christmas unaware of what waited, patient, in the dark. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the weight of inevitability pressing into her chest, and the whispers, soft, insistent, eternal, returned in her mind. We are here. Always, waiting, forever. The candle flickered once more and went out. And in that darkness, Emma understood fully. She would never be free. The silence returned, heavier than ever, wrapping around her like a shroud.